Hi people, today we continue our works in Moscow. This was filmed in beginning of August, and what I wanted to show you is that not all the houses have the buried windows, of course. And this is one of the first skyscrapers Moscow built in the beginning of 20th century. It's like 13-story building or something like this. And as you can see, it doesn't have any basement windows, so it's a lot more cheaper and efficient to build a multi-story building than to build an insulation and all those basements for the basement floor. So it's kind of hard to sell those spaces for rent or something like this, and so it's more efficient to build just a multi-story building. And what they did is build the high skyscraper then. So this is no argument for people that's saying that the basement floors are okay and nice to be built. No, they are not, because it's a lot more profitable to build a multi-story building. And all those buildings on Tverskaya Street are totally reconstructed and been reconstructed multiple times. And the last times was when Stalin was reconstructing Tverskaya. He was moving old houses to the side streets, and some of them were demolished and some of them just left. And as the research of many different Russian researchers show us, that most of the houses that are built before 19th century and during the first half of 19th century have the buried windows. But some of them look like this, with the windows to the ground. Some of them have totally buried windows, which are now, as you can see, closed with the bricks. So the point is that you can use the old buildings to construct the new ones on them, because the brickwork was so tough to demolish that you're supposed to be blowing this with dynamite to demolish the construction, because they had so decent brickwork, masonry. So sometimes they just use the previous buildings as the basement floors, and that's why we can see such integrations of authoritarian style or neoclassical style, whatever you call it, with the Stalin style, because Stalin just used the decent buildings of the previous times, pre-flood era. Just imagine 19th century, what would you build such huge arches in the houses if you don't have any technical purpose for that? As you can see, the huge truck is driving out of this house. So as you can see, the amount of space inside the house, inside the yard of the house, allows such huge truck to ride and turn and stuff like this. Although there's something inside the arch that is not letting it pass through very, very easy, because it's too tight for it. But still, it has been made as a huge arches. So they had the technology, they probably had the technique, and they also had the purpose, technical purpose for creating such spaces and places. So we're turning to the main street, to the Tverskaya Street, which is directed to the Red Square, and going further to the center. So as you can see, most of the buildings were rebuilt and created very good to have the trading spaces, market spaces on the first floors, and nobody ever thought of creating the basement floors in the Stalin's era, which is like 40s and 50s of 20th century. But as you walk towards the side streets, you can see those houses totally ugly, reconstructed, and some of the doors are created in the places where windows supposed to be, and some of the basement windows, the first floor windows, are closed with the brickwork. But we move further, and now we're gonna cross the street to see. I always wanted to have a lunch with one of my friends' cafe. She's like about my age, and like 35, 36, maybe 37. So she created a network of Vietnamese food cafe, and I always promised to visit it for like 5 years, but I didn't have time for that. So what we can see now is the major house, Moscow Major or Moscow Governor House, also with the bird first windows. This is Teleshnikov side street where the cafe is located. Some of you people said that we don't have cops there, so as you can see the boss of the cops. And this is the monument to Yuri Dolgoruki, who's supposed to be a Duke of Moscow, the one who created and established the Moscow, but I don't think so, because Moscow had a bunch of evidence of ancient villages and towns, and Moscow is very huge, so you cannot just say like Moscow was established at that time. So probably some case of fake history. But anyways, officials celebrate Moscow's like establishment with his and tie it to him, to Yuri Dolgoruki Duke. This is the Moscow Major house. Right now the government of Moscow is located in all this group of buildings there. All those buildings depend on Moscow budget and really good maintained very well. So right now I'm going towards the cafe, and I'm going to show you a couple evidence of inside the basement floor, so-called basement floor, which are really the previous pre-flood first floor. As you can see, nobody would do a basement window to nothing. We don't even have a light here because we don't have any access to the street. As you can see, the windows are totally inside the building. They look to the staircase. So right now I'm rising towards the end of the cafe. Walking out. As you can see, this summer terrace here, and those windows are also from the previous first floor. Like see horizontal view. Also closed windows here. Probably this all was excavated, and I'm gonna show you why a little bit later. So all this area was covered with mud. So let me switch to my main camera, and I'm gonna show you this building a little bit more detailed. As you can see, those windows look very ugly because something is beneath them. Doesn't look organic. Those long windows on the second floor are not compared with the windows on current basement floor, whatever you call it. So probably they were extended and blocked because the building was reconstructed maybe in 20th century. As you can see, those windows, probably the original one, right now blocked with the bricks. There's plenty of space there right now not used because the building is probably abandoned and preparing for reconstruction. Moscow is total reconstruction city. Each year we see a bunch of reconstructions everywhere, so this is a very good point. As we can see in the first moments of this video, I've showed you when the road was put up, and we can see the windows underneath the previous asphalt right now rising. Nothing else is so evident. This is this building. Looks like pretty much colonial Tartarian style. So many cafes in the basements of those buildings. As you can see, the full side basement floor everywhere is used by cafes in Moscow. So to the right you can see the actual level of excavation, because all this ground was leveled to this level. So all this probably was excavated to create this side street, because you cannot just leave those spaces for nothing. Moscow is very expensive. So they excavated probably it and used it for further renting purposes. So I'm returning back to the main street and walking towards the Tverskaya street again. I'm gonna fast speed for a little bit, because it looks boring for me to watch it. So this is a Stalin's Empire Street, Empire style, whatever you call it. Looks pretty much like Tartarian style. So he copied the Tartarian style and moved the frontline houses inside the backyards. So the houses was literally lifted and moved inside the backyards. One of those famous houses was totally reviewed by one of the Russian researchers, the Председатель. I showed one of his videos in one of mine videos, and he totally wasted this building's history. This is so-called Savinskaya Podvorye, or Savin's yard, whatever you call it. It's one of the Russian merchants' house, and his office, his mansion, whatever you call it, and his business house. It has a huge yard inside and huge spaces for rent right now, and probably back then, as they state, it was built in 1907. But this Russian researcher, Председатель, he totally wasted this building's history. Probably sometime else I'm gonna show you more on this building, and probably in my documentary, if he lets me use his footage. So I won't review this one right now, but this is totally fake history of this building. Just leave it for now. So walking towards this Kamergersky side street, in the direction of Red Square. So all those new houses don't have the basement floor. As you can see, it was pretty expensive to build the basement floor with windows, and of course it is, and nobody will prove that it's not, because it's a lot cheaper to build just one more floor on the top than to build and to waste money on insulation and total maintenance of those buildings. So after reconstruction, they get rid of those buried windows in the buildings of the previous era, building those stairs and stuff like this, and creating them more cheaper renovations here. So we're walking towards the swimmer. I've showed the swimmer in one of my videos, which is totally on swimmer. So this is probably the art evidence of the mud flood. And we see people dying in the mud, in the waves of mud, and it was totally blown my head off when I watched the video of Russian research on this house. totally wasting the historical mainstream version on this sculpture, monument, whatever you call it, panel, art object, whatever you call it. And this is a theater right now, so it was a theater, and right now it's also a theater, one of the famous Russian theaters of Moscow. You know, if all you guys seen wakey video about geology and flat earth and something like this, so I've seen it, and I have much to say about it, and probably in one of the further videos I'm gonna waste wakey. If you're watching me, then you shouldn't be touching the mudflood topic, because you know, you're totally misleading people, because you're saying like mudflood is covering the previous flood, which was like 4,000 years ago. And you're totally, you know, jerking people, because there's no way it's covering. What I'm trying to say is everything is BS before the 19th century and could be made up, so you cannot just be like, you know, based on facts or whatever you find in your video fact check, whatever you call it. So let me just return to that in one of my further videos and show your real face, because when you, well, leave it for now, just let it be intrigue for you guys, and you wakey. I know you watching my videos, I know you commenting it. It's not that I'm not responding, it's just I didn't have much time to respond to you. So, and I don't have an academic Russian accent. I have my own accent. This is not academic. Academic Russian accent is like this. And just, you know, feel the difference. You have an academic English accent, but I don't have an academic Russian accent, right? So side streets are full of those buried windows, and it's not a local event. And I'll prove it to you guys, because we have a bunch of videos, a bunch of footage all around the world, from all around the world, and people sending it to me and keep sending it to me and keep sending it to me, and all these dates show us the 19th century. So it's not a local flood, as you can say, it's the main event of 19th century, right? And it doesn't, you know, it can't be tied to the just to one date like 1816, 1812 or 1813. It's like tied to this certain period, which we call like 1840s till 1850s, 1860s, and we can say it's about that time. So let me end for now. I hope you guys don't bother with my footage and not bored enough to shut it off. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you later. And a little surprise in the end.